Imagine stepping onto ground soaked with blood and mud, surrounded by broken spears and torn standards. There, under the echo of metal clashing, Rome did more than defeat its enemies. It gathered lessons, performed ancient rituals, and reinvented its tactics to emerge stronger after each confrontation. Have you ever wondered how exhausted legions, after days of intense fighting, managed to regain discipline and hope while clearing bodies and repairing fortifications? How that moment of cleanup, collecting bones, burying the dead, restoring the ranks, served to renew the spirit of soldiers who, just minutes before, faced death side by side. Throughout this video, we will explore the battles of the Roman Empire, from Alesia to Zama, from Adrianople to the Catalaunian Plains, and reveal how these epic conflicts shaped not only borders, but the very soul of Rome. You'll see how, through purification rituals and innovative strategies, the Roman army maintained its cohesion, its faith in the future, and its reputation for invincibility. But before we dive into these stories and curiosities of the Roman Empire, make sure you're subscribed to our channel and hit the bell. That way, you won't miss any of our videos full of secrets and surprises about ancient Rome. What if I told you that behind every cleanup ritual lay a code? It was there, burying the dead, that Rome sealed pacts of loyalty and engraved promises of eternal glory. The fall of Attila on the Catalaunian Plains. At dawn on June 20th, 451, the ground of Gaul trembled with the thunder of hooves and the clank of armor. On one side came Attila's Huns, fierce in their assault. On the other stood an unlikely army, under Flavius Aetius, a man who knew Hun culture from years spent as a hostage, and Visigothic king Theodoric III. Romans, Visigoths, Alans, Franks and Burgundians joined into a single human shield to stop the scourge of God. The spears clashed like thunder when Attila sent his heavy cavalry into the allied center. Aetius, anticipating the Huns' speed, deployed his legions on uneven ground, shallow ditches and gentle hills that broke the momentum of the enemy horses. On the flanks, Theodoric and his son Thorismund held a Gothic shield wall, repelling arrows and protecting the Roman infantry. At a critical moment, Theodoric was struck by a spear and fell. A deadly silence hung over the Visigothic line. Then Thorismund, in fury and courage, raised the Gothic standard and led a devastating charge against the Hun cavalry. The renewed momentum spread through the allied ranks. The brutal shock shattered Hun cohesion and sent panic among the invaders. When the sun set, the Huns fled in disorder, abandoning broken shields and blood-stained standards. Rome had withstood the greatest gathering of warriors in the West. The next morning, Allied soldiers began the field-clearing ritual, gathering bodies, burying the fallen in mass graves, and reforming the lines. With each body lifted and each grave filled, faith in victory and unity among former enemies was renewed. Under the weight of broken shackles and blood-forged alliances, another crisis emerged. What happened when barbarian hordes crossed the Danube and challenged the Eastern Empire? Adrianople, the battle that devastated Rome. In August of 378, ominous skies over Adrianople foreshadowed disaster. Emperor Valens, confident in the numerical superiority of his legions, camped on flat ground outside the walls. Opposite him, Fritigern gathered Tervingi and Alans, hungry and enraged after months of mistreatment by Roman officials. The tension was palpable. Barbarian warriors fought for vengeance and survival. At the signal, the Gothic and Alan cavalry burst against the Roman lines. The horses' manes sparkled in the setting sun. Gothic spears tore through the rigid Roman shields. The infantry, clad in larica segmentata and heavy armor, could not match the barbarians' mobility. In minutes, the formations collapsed, gaps opened, Roman soldiers fell under curved blades and deadly arrows. Valens, struck by a spear, fell wounded on the field. When night fell, what remained was a sea of bodies. It is estimated that 2/3 of the Roman garrison were annihilated, including the emperor himself. Clearing the field became a mournful, task-spanning days. Auxiliary troops collected skeletons, recovered standards, and buried comrades in mass graves. The howls of wolves and the cawing of crows were the only spectators to that tragedy. Adrianople was not just a military defeat, but a brutal warning. Without strategy, terrain awareness, and respect for the enemy, even the world's greatest army can disintegrate. Valens's collapse opened the door to profound changes in the East, proving that Rome was no longer invincible. If surviving Adrianople seemed impossible, wait until you discover the political earthquake that shook Rome after Valentinian I's unexpected death. Betrayed Goths and the unstoppable revolt. In 376, hordes of Tervingi Goths crossed the Danube, fleeing the Huns. At first, the Roman Empire received them as refugees, but hospitality turned to exploitation. Officials like Lupinus and Maximus diverted supplies, forced the Goths to pay extortionate tributes, and pushed families to the brink of starvation. Reports of children sold for rotten bread reached Rome, sparking scandal and outrage even among imperial soldiers. Feeling betrayed, the Goths turned on their hosts. Fritigern, their charismatic leader, united Tervingi, Greuthungi, and Alans in an oath of vengeance. On August 9, 376, under the pretense of peace talks at Marcianople, Roman officers ambushed and beheaded Gothic chiefs. The betrayal ignited the barbarians' hearts. Roman villages were sacked, crops burned, and fury became a war machine forged in hatred and despair. When the legions marched to crush the rebellion, they found not starving refugees, but a fierce army, bound by unity, born of suffering. After the clash, field clearing took on new urgency. Bodies piled along the riverbanks were forced into mass graves, while shocked Roman warriors removed broken shields and twisted armor. The scene, mud and blood, symbolized a broken pact. Rome learned in the harshest way that injustice breeds relentless enemies. With the empire shaken by Gothic fury, Valentinian the Hun's death exploded like an earthquake in Rome's power corridors, and you'll see how it changed everything. The death of Valentinian and the political chaos. On November 17, 375, what began as a diplomatic meeting with the Quadi tribe turned tragic. Valentinian Wees, already tense over frontier threats, erupted in rage at the barbarian envoys. His face went pale as he suffered a sudden stroke, and there, in the imperial hall, the August lay dead. The news raced through Rome like lightning. The man who had held the West together lay motionless. The next day, the Senate rushed to name 16-year-old Gratian and 4-year-old Valentinian II as co-emperors. But boys on the throne invited contest. Generals and prefects conspired to control the Praetorian Guard, the real power behind the throne. The funeral became a stage for suspicion. Who would guard the body? Who would secure the succession? Its antechambers, factions fought for the right to wash, anoint, and dress the corpse, a ritual symbolizing power transfer. Meanwhile, the provincial armies eyed the youthful rulers warily. Political cleansing required more than rights. It demanded real alliances, removal of rivals, and consolidation of loyal commanders. The Western Empire lay fractured. Ambitious senators, power-hungry generals, and self-interested bureaucrats turned every decision into a minefield. The transition exposed a cruel truth. Without a strong leader, Rome risked collapsing from within long before external enemies reached its walls. And while Rome struggled to stabilize its power, a legendary siege was rising in Gaul. The next chapter in this saga will show men trapped not only by walls, but by the fate of an empire. The impossible siege of Alesia. In the summer of 52 BC, Caesar faced Vercingetorix at Alesia, a fortified hilltop city surrounded by deep valleys. Rather than storm the walls, the Roman general ordered construction of 2 lines of fortifications. An inner circumvallation of 18 kilons to trap the Gauls, and an outer contravallation of 21 kilons to deter a relief army. Legionaries dug ditches and set stakes under a rain of enemy arrows. Many rested against their swords, ready to return at a moment's notice. Vercingetorix attempted nighttime escapes and sent envoys to allied tribes. But wide ditches, sharpened, wolf pit stakes, and watchtowers thwarted every effort. Each Gaul who fell was removed by Roman attendants. One fewer body meant one less gap and a blow to enemy morale. Under the scorching sun, Roman armor gleamed while the besieged, starving and exhausted, watched their supplies dwindle. When 250,000 Darsans, Gaulish warriors, finally appeared on the horizon, they found unbreachable walls. Mass assaults crashed against dry moats and hidden spear traps. Hunger and thirst spread like plague inside Alesia, dissolving unity atop the hill. Realizing the inevitable, Vercingetorix ordered surrender to spare his people. Have you ever wondered how this siege forever shifted the balance of power in Gaul? Leave a like and strengthen our army of historians. But Alesia's fall was just the beginning. Soon Rome would march to face its greatest rival on the field of Zama. Famine, Cruelty, and Vercingetorix's surrender. In Alesia's final days, despair gripped the besieged. With no food or water, women, children, and the wounded crowded by the inner walls, begging for bread. Vercingetorix, pressed by collapsing supplies, made his harshest decision: expel civilians to die between the circumvallation and contravallation. The sight of bodies stretched under the August sun echoed war's terrible cost. Outside, legionaries performed an unrelenting cleanup. Ritual. They removed corpses, marked names on wooden tablets, and buried the dead in shallow graves across the plains. Each body cleared meant another meter of secure trench and a boost to Roman morale. Discipline prevailed. Cleanup was not merely sanitation, but a symbolic act of conquest and psychological domination. When afternoon fell in 52 BC, Vercingetorix himself, exhausted and starving, descended from the hill. Before Caesar, he laid down his sword and standard, a gesture of surrender that shook Gaulish pride. It marked not only the siege's end, but the collapse of a belief. The people who once saw themselves as invincible now bowed to Roman resolve. The surrender took place in a heavy silence, broken only by the clatter of armor and the drum of shields. Now hold your breath. Soon Rome will face Hannibal at Zama, in a clash of military genius that will decide the Mediterranean's future. Zama, Rome versus Hannibal. In 202 BC, the plain near Carthage became the stage for Rome's revenge against Hannibal. The Carthaginian general arrayed his veteran troops behind some 80 war elephants, living terror machines that had shredded Roman ranks in Italy. Opposite him, Scipio Africanus deployed his legions in manipular formations, leaving corridors between units so the elephants could pass without breaking the line. At dawn, the blast of Roman trumpets mingled with the beasts, bellowing. As the elephants charged, legionaries hurled javelins and sounded horns. Confused, many elephants faltered or turned back into their own lines. The gaps allowed the Roman infantry to hold the center. On the flanks, Numidian cavalry under Massinissa shone. Swift and precise, they encircled and crushed the Carthaginian horse, severing Hannibal's rear guard. With Hannibal's wings isolated, the legions advanced in a pincer, squeezing the veteran corps. When the dust settled, some 20,000 Carthaginians lay dead and another 20,000 were captured. As the sun set, Roman officers began the silent removal. Ritual. Each legionary collected bones and weapons, burying the dead in shallow graves. The cleanup symbolized the end of the Punic threat and Rome's undisputed rise in the Mediterranean. But how did Rome turn this crushing victory into lasting political and economic power? The key lies in a treaty that humiliated Carthage. The strategy that defeated the elephants. Scipio Africanus knew that fighting war elephants required more than bravery. It demanded refined tactics. Studying Hannibal's Italian campaigns, he saw that uncontrolled beasts caused panic, but could be outmaneuvered. He therefore ordered his legions into manipular ranks with 5-foot corridors between every 2 shields. When the elephants charged, trumpets blared and legionaries stepped into the corridors. The beasts, disoriented by noise and resistance, passed through harmlessly. Right behind them, javelin-armed troops rained missiles on the elephants' flanks, disrupting and scattering them. Meanwhile, Massinissa's Numidian cavalry executed an encirclement. They wheeled around the Carthaginian wings, cut off the rear, and prevented the elephants from regrouping. The result was an enemy battle line in fragments. With the beasts neutralized and flanks exposed, the legions closed in from both sides, crushing Hannibal's veterans. Afterward, the battlefield turned into a silent cleanup zone. Roman officers gathered elephant remains and Carthaginian bodies, burying them in shallow trenches. This ritual was more than sanitation. It confirmed Roman tactical supremacy and proved that discipline and ingenuity prevail even against colossal foes. And Carthage's humiliation peaked in the Treaty of Zama, a pact that turned the once great African power into Rome's vassal. The treaty that humiliated Carthage. In 201 BC, after Zama's defeat, Carthage signed terms that reduced it to a shadow of itself. The Treaty of Zama stipulated loss of all Iberian colonies, cutting off silver mines and revenues, a navy limited to 10 ships, eliminating independent maritime power, payment of 10,000 talents of silver over 50 years, crippling the Punic economy, prohibition on waging war without Rome's permission, making Carthage a client state. War trophies were catalogued and shipped to Rome. Officers supervised the cleanup, bones heaped in shallow graves, broken standards displayed as proof of supremacy. The plain of Zama, now corpse-free, became a living museum of victory, a constant reminder of the price of defying Rome. Carthage never regained military strength. The city turned to commerce under Roman oversight, but the fear of renewal never left Roman minds. Meanwhile, Scipio's triumph bolstered Rome's confidence. Tactical success and rigorous post-battle cleanup cemented Rome's status as the uncontested Mediterranean hegemon. With Carthage subdued and its fleet destroyed, Roman legions turned eastward, and the Macedonian Wars would prove just how far Rome's discipline and ambition could reach. Roman dominion over Greece. After Zama, Rome set its sights on the Hellenistic world. In 197 BC, at the Battle of Cynocephalae, Consul Titus Quinctius Flamininus confronted Philip V of Macedon. Using light infantry maneuvers alongside the famed Macedonian phalanx, Flamininus shattered Philip's army and proclaimed freedom for the Greek cities in a public assembly, a political masterstroke that enhanced Rome's prestige as liberator while securing loyal client states throughout the peninsula. Decades later, in 190 BC, Antiochus III the Great sought to reclaim influence in Asia Minor. At Magnesia, Lucius Cornelius Scipio Asiaticus, employing siege works and mobile cavalry, defeated the Seleucid king. The Treaty of Apamea, 188 BC, gave Rome indirect control of coastal cities and garrison rights, turning Asia Minor into Rome's sphere of influence. But consolidation was not won by sword alone. Rome imposed alliance treaties, stationed garrisons at strategic points, and supported local elites favorable to the Senate. Formerly rival cities, Corinth, Thebes, Olympia, hosted Roman aediles overseeing public works and festivals, blending Greek and Roman traditions. The Greek soil, once scarred by ancient conflicts, became a cultural assimilation laboratory. Ruined, theaters and temples bear Latin and Greek inscriptions, reminding us that for Rome, victory meant reinvention. Each stone cleared of rubble symbolized a new chapter, the Republic transforming the Mediterranean into a Roman lake. If you enjoyed this journey through time and want more fascinating stories, subscribe, leave a like, and share this video. You'll help us keep bringing high-quality historical content. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video on ancient Rome and its grand empire.